A key pillar of an effective course, that is one where all students can learn at deep levels, really is inclusivity. That is creating an environment where all students feel able to participate, able to learn. But before we get to talking about how to create an inclusive classroom, I think it's important that we think a little bit about our perceptions, our attitudes, because whether we're aware of it or not, our perceptions can have a huge impact on how we design our courses, how we teach, and therefore how inclusive our classroom feels for our students. So what do I mean by perceptions? Well, here's a good example. A little while ago, there was a group of scholars who sent a survey out to academics across a range of disciplines and in a number of different institutions. And they asked a bunch of survey questions related to beliefs and attitudes and perceptions. So a good example is this item, one of the items on the survey was the one you see. Being a top scholar in my discipline requires a special aptitude that just can't be taught. And the folks responding to the survey were asked whether they agreed or disagreed with this on a Likert 1 to 5 scale. There were a few other items that asked similar kinds of questions or asked the same kind of, getting at the same kind of attitudes in different ways. You have an opportunity to indicate your response to this particular question. The folks who did the survey compiled all the results, and they used these survey items to create an index related to these beliefs, and then looked at how that index correlated with the fraction of doctorates in that field that are women or folks of color. And when we look at the results of that, you can see a fairly straightforward negative correlation. That is, the more likely that someone believes that sort of innate ability is part of being successful, the fewer women there are in that field. And the top graph here is just STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math, and the bottom is social sciences and humanities. They also looked at this correlation with race and ethnicity. These are showing all fields together, not broken out, but the top graph here is showing those who are African American, the correlation with African American percentage in the discipline, and the bottom is the percentage of Asian American in the discipline. So what might be driving these correlations? One explanation is that beliefs about innate ability tend to impact how we think about our students and also what we believe about our own role as instructors. So for example, when students are struggling in a class, some instructors might react by blaming the students. They believe that the students are struggling as a result of not caring, not working hard enough, or perhaps not thinking those students are smart enough, that they're simply not college material. A very different reason might be to adopt what's often referred to as an equity-minded approach, which shifts the focus from what students are doing or not doing to what we, the instructors or the institution, are doing or not doing. So for example, instead of assuming students are lazy or unmotivated, an equity-minded instructor might ask, how can I help my students understand the value of what they're learning? How might I design my course to ensure that they have multiple opportunities to engage? What resources and support can I provide to ensure that they're able to fully participate? Or to back up even more, what can I do to find out more about why my students are struggling rather than making assumptions in the first place? It should be clear that these two different mindsets will lead to very different interactions with students, very different choices about course design and course delivery. And that's why perceptions were at the foundation of that student success pyramid that we saw a few minutes ago. Whether we realize it or not, our beliefs often manifest in our courses in a variety of ways. The ways in which our beliefs and perceptions manifest in our courses is why creating inclusive classes really requires some conscious effort. It requires stepping back, reflecting on what we believe, how those beliefs might be impacting our classrooms, and what we can do to stop that from happening. There's an article that's linked here talking more about what it means to be an equity-minded instructor. So I'm going to ask you to pause and go read that before continuing with this video. Staying equity-minded will make it more likely that you naturally incorporate the 6 core principles of equitable and inclusive teaching. I want to give a brief explanation of each of these principles, and then you'll be asked to look at a few specific teaching strategies related to each principle. So to start, in general, accessibility means thinking about students who might have physical or cognitive differences that will require accommodations. So for example, ensuring that digital files and contents can be read or heard by students with visual or hearing impairments, or giving extra time on exams for students with psychological and/or learning differences. In our current environment, this also means thinking about accessibility for students with limited access to computers or stable internet service. A key aspect of equitable and inclusive teaching in general is recognizing and working with the diversity of our students. Being flexible is one way to honor the fact that our students are not all the same, that they come to us with sometimes vastly different experiences. And again, our current environment adds an additional nuance because of the additional complexities when everybody is working and learning remotely. So you want to think about how you can build flexibility into your policies, your assessments, and your activities. Being identity conscious is one way to incorporate that flexibility. Our students do come to us with very different experiences, and those experiences are often tied to their social identities. That is race, gender, sexual orientation, whether they're first generation, that sort of thing. Acknowledging and incorporating those identities into your course can help make sure all students feel seen, feel included, supported, and therefore better able to learn. That includes being vigilant about the ways students may express bias and microaggressions to other students. And there's a little bit more information in this module about that. Being proactive is particularly important for ensuring equity and inclusion because it's often the students who most need our help who are least willing or able to ask for it. So we really need to not only build a great deal of a structure and accountability into our courses from the beginning, but we also need to make sure that we're using that formative feedback to identify and then reach out to students who may need some extra attention. The last 2 principles here are fundamental tenets of effective teaching, but they're particularly important for students from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds. Establishing supportive interpersonal relationships with students was already discussed extensively in Module 1 of this institute. But finally, being equitable and inclusive means remembering that our students are not mind readers, nor are they all well-versed in what's sometimes called the hidden curriculum that faculty take for granted. That is, all the things about being faculty, being in academia, that are second nature to us, may not be even known to students who, for example, are first generation in their family to go to college, right? So we need to be vigilant to ensure that we're not making any unnecessary assumptions about what our students know and are able to do, but instead are really explicit and thorough about our expectations. You've been seeing a few examples of strategies related to each of these principles. The next activity in this module asks you to look at an even longer list of strategies and to consider which you might want to adopt in your own course.